Democratic divide on full display over the weekend as some in the party continue to push for impeachment while House Speaker Nancy Pelosi urges caution. The president, however, says he's not really worried about it.
So I'm listening to you. You're not worried about being prosecuted once you leave office.
I did nothing wrong, George. Did nothing wrong. There was no collusion. You don't even hear Russia mentioned anymore. Russia's not mentioned. Now it's all about obstruction of what? They built up a phony crime. They hired a man that hated Trump. He hired 18 people that were Democrats that hated Trump. Some of them contributed to Clinton's campaign.
Pelosi holding firm, still not wanting to rush into impeachment proceedings.
I don't think there's anything more divisive we can do than to impeach a president of the United States. And so you have to handle it with great care. It has to be about the truth and the facts to take you to whatever decision has to be there. It should by no means be done politically. You shouldn't impeach politically, or you shouldn't not impeach politically.
And yet, freshman Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez publicly airing her grievances about Nancy Pelosi's refusal to impeach Trump.
So how real is that progressive frustration that Speaker Pelosi has said, at least so far, and she seems to be really holding the line that she's not ready to do that?
I think it's quite real. I believe that there is a very real animus and desire to make sure that we are that we are holding this president to account.
Juan, let me ask you about how Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's from a very blue district. She doesn't have to worry about her own reelection. And I think she was kind of setting down a marker there that the progressive wing of the caucus that Nancy Pelosi is trying to guide and lead is not going to worry that much about the other districts because they really want to see the president held to account in their view.
Right, but I think there's an important distinction I think Nancy Pelosi is making. There's a big difference between impeaching President Trump and removing him from office. And I sometimes think when I hear Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez speak, it is out of just like a fury at Trump. And it really does represent close to 70% of the Democratic base, Dana, that would like to see him impeached. But again, there's a big difference between impeachment and actually going through and having the Senate convict the president and remove him from office. So I think that, you know, it's a matter of understanding, and this comes back to where you started this, that Nancy Pelosi is focused on 2020, not only on keeping control of the House and retaining her speakership, but also on defeating President Trump. And she looks at a lot of those districts that you've highlighted to our viewers repeatedly over the last few weeks and says, hey, a lot of these Democrats who won in 2018 in the midterms were people who came from what I would call purple, maybe even reddish districts. And I think Pelosi is just a really smart political player.
Pelosi has, Jesse, more of a hold on her caucus than I think Boehner or Ryan ever had. But if the AOCs of the...
Boehner and Ryan had a hold on their caucus?
I'm saying that they didn't.
I know, but that's a low bar. Yeah, I know.
And so now, like, if the progressive decide to make their own sort of House Freedom Caucus, could there be more problems for her?
There could be, but she's not going to impeach because she doesn't have the votes. They only have about 30 right now in the House. And what do they have? 200 and some plus Democrats in the House. And 61% of the American people don't want impeachment. That's in the Q poll. They're totally misreading the public. They had these impeachment rallies all across the country over the weekend. Total bust. No one ever even really showed up.
I didn't even know that.
Exactly. And you're in the business. That's why. So the whole news cycle is driven by impeachment through the press. The press wants to book Democrats who want to impeach the president. They invite them on, they say impeach, and then they do a segment on it. Then the media runs a poll on impeachment, and then they do a segment on the poll. Then the media asks Donald Trump about impeachment. He says that they do a segment. They ask the Democrats running for president about impeachment. Then they do a segment. So it's this self-perpetuating news cycle about impeachment, but it's in a bubble. And the bubble's constantly shrinking because CNN and MSNBC's ratings are going down so big. And the rest of the country's like, I'm just going to go get a beer out on the porch. I don't care anymore.
Did you get a beer out on the porch this weekend for the impeachment protest we didn't know about?
I wish.
I know Hong Kong can throw a protest.
Yeah. Let me start with the small picture, and then I'm going to move on to the big picture,
Dana.
Dana.
This is going to be great.
The small picture begins with this. Do you ever get in a fight with your spouse with little or no reason why? Why do you do that? Because you can. because things are good. Both of you are healthy. The kids are fine. The finances seem to be okay. That allows you actually to bicker, right? But trust me, when one person is ill or another person is in financial peril, there is no bickering because you have a huge concern going on. Now that goes to the big picture. We are living in an amazing time where we have to broaden the definition of news to include stuff that isn't actually real news. So people are complaining about stuff that may happen, not is happening, right? There is no impeachment. These are what-if arguments as opposed to what-are arguments. We have had this shift to what-if arguments over the last, I'd say, last 2 years. In the past, the issues, what are? War, terror, poverty, unemployment, crime. They still exist, but you cannot deny the direction that the world is going in solving a lot of these issues, especially ISIS, North Korea, joblessness. Now we're talking about tainted alcohol in Dominican Republic, Trump's personality, and Chinese tariffs. America in 2019 are like Michael Jordan circa 1990 suffering from a hangnail. That's what America's problems are. It has a hangnail.
We're headed into the roaring 2020s.
The Dems are kids playing in the backyard because mommy and daddy built them a nice, safe home with a great sandbox and a swing set. Mommy and daddy is Trump's America, safe, serene, and prosperous. The kids aren't worried about crime. They're not worried about kidnapping. They're not worried about wages because they're going up. So they get to play all day in their impeachment backyard.
One of the polls, Emily, this weekend, I think might have been ours, it said that a total of 27% of people want to see impeachment. And I saw a news report last night, not on our network, that was basically saying, like, wow, this is really growing. I mean, it's 27% of the country.
And there was also a 3% margin of error,
Yes.
so it literally could be as low as 24. I think everyone made such good points.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Even Juan?
Yes. So I'll start with you, Juan. I thought the point that you made that was so excellent is the notion that where does the fury stop, essentially, for these progressive left Democrats who are shouting about impeachment that doesn't equal removal? And we all know, similar to the Mueller report and what happened, that the ripple effect is just that. And that at every layer of the ripple, there's like, well, there's going to be another one. Well, this. It's always a step further. And what struck me about AOC's clear delusion and that kind of petulance, that petulant quality, is the fact that, she honestly believes, as she said, that they risk losing the presidency, the next one, unless they elect a candidate that believes in true transformational qualities for every U.S. citizen, and literally thinks that's true. And I just spent 10 days driving around the South, 6 states, and Texas with Fox.
You had 6 states?
Yeah.
Wow.
States.
Oh, states.
What do you think I said?
Dates.
Oh, states. God, Greg. This is a family show. Anyway, and that's
For
not
now,
what,
anyway.
That's not what people were talking about by any means. And I think, again, it kind of speaks to the level of the 16-year-old teenager having the loudest voice that the media is picking up and resounding in the echo chamber. Final point, that poll also, interestingly, said that 40% of independents, however, support impeachment. So I do think that's something that we should watch.
You only talked about his point. You didn't talk about anybody else's
I
point.
did media,
I did
boy.
Yeah, but let me just also say
mine's a given.
that it was President Trump who agreed with her, which was a surprise to me.
I told you, they're like two peas in a pod. You put them in a room together, they're going to be fast friends.
And also, Dana, it was the NBC poll that had 27.
NBC, not
the
us.
Fox News poll had like 43% impeach and remove and 7% impeach only. 50%.
There we go. All right, there you had it.